I just have to read this for the benefit of compliance. The content of this video and webinar is for education only and is free of cost. We don't provide any buy and sell recommendation. Nothing we say must be construed as investment advice. And we encourage our viewers to conduct their own research before making any investment decisions. We are brokers, distributors of financial products. Please be aware, we are not SEBI registered investment advisors. We are registered with SEBI as AMFI, MF distributors, and as equity sub-brokers, SEBI registered equity brokers. So by accessing and using our content on any social media channel, you acknowledge and agree to the above disclaimer. So having said that, friends, let's move into the budget, the main session of today. Okay. So, we were all thinking and expecting a lot of things from the budget. Last year, we were thinking that it's going to be a populist budget. A lot of nice things will sort of come up, so on and so forth, but nothing really came up, right? You can stop the presentation for a moment. So nothing really came up in that sense, isn't it? And this is the first time where we felt that less is more. So we found where we have a situation where the finance minister talked about a few things and stopped. 57 minutes and done. Thankfully, nothing on tax, no tinkering around. So we got an opportunity to focus on part A. Part A of a budget is normally that part which speaks about the developmental agenda and the things that the government has done and proposes to do, and also gives an account of the income and expenditure typically that has happened in the last year of the budget and what will likely happen in the next year. So that's typically what happens in a budget. So this time around, it was only part A really. But why is this part A very, very interesting, important, and very heartwarming this time? Because A, we listen to it. B, very interestingly, in the last 10 years, we have seen this government made an announcement and not only made the announcement, but also executed the announcement. So if a particular scheme was launched, we actually saw that scheme coming into action and fructifying into good results as was expected. If the government said we want to increase the airport capacity, we actually saw it happening. If the government said we want to build these roads, we actually saw them happening. Not only happening, we started using them as well. So whether it's infrastructure, whether it's power, whether it's education, whether it's women's empowerment, all of those things, announcement made and executed, and we saw results. Which means that at this stage, some of the announcements that were made, most of them were in continuity of the previous ones. But what makes it even more interesting is point number 3, which is that the government is already very confident. We all know that. Exit polls are also showing the same, that we will probably be having this government to continue for another 5 years. And all of us are very hopeful of that, right? Because we've seen so much of progress. And when there is progress, we would like to see much more of it. So from that standpoint, part A becomes really, really very interesting, very important. Now, at this stage, just to set the tone of this whole presentation, Jhaveri, can you play us a small video? This is about India development story. I mean, we are going to make references to this, but I just want to play a 2-minute video from Mint. Can you put up the video, please? Full screen.
Indian economy continues to be the cynosure of all eyes. Its growth prospects are hogging the limelight once again after UN's Department of Economic and Social Affairs in a report said that India will continue to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. The report, titled World Economic Situation and Prospects 2024, goes on to say that India's GDP growth is projected to hit 6.2% this year, which is great news, especially as the global economy during the same period is expected to slow down further from 2.7% to 2.4%. This revised figure is much lower than the global growth rate of 3% recorded before the pandemic. But if the world around India is slowing down, how's India continuing to march forward on the economic front? According to the report, factors responsible for India's exceptional growth rate include the robust domestic demand, strong growth in manufacturing and services sectors. First up, let's take a look at India's services sector, which is one of the fastest growing in the world. It contributes over 50% to India's GDP. The seasonally adjusted HSBC India Services PMI Business Activity Index surged from 56.9 to 59 in December, signaling a sharp increase in output and the most pronounced since September 2023. This growth in services sector is complemented by the growth in manufacturing. Trade body FICCI believes the manufacturing sector is expected to see sustained economic activity. A survey conducted by FICCI, which covered 380 manufacturers that account for about 4.8 trillion rupees in sales, showed a robust 74% capacity utilization and improved future investment outlook during Q2. Growth in manufacturing and services sector, along with major policy initiatives by the government, including the push to Make in India and revision of regulatory norms, along with deeper penetration of internet, have also been cited as major factors influencing India's growth. Some of the other key findings of the UN report include that China's recovery after COVID has been slower than expected. Also, that global inflation eased in 2023 and is expected to decline further to 3.9% in 2024. What do you think about India's chances in 2024? Don't forget to share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Please like and
Thank you. Thank you. So, what are some of the keywords that we heard from here? India is moving up. Global economy is either sideways or moving down. Number two, domestic demand keeps surging. We all know this thing. I'm just summarizing it. Services sector is growing by leaps and bounds for us. Make in India, there was an initiative announced, and we are actually seeing everything happening in Make in India. I mean, to that extent, when we spoke about war and markets a few months ago, we also said that how India and the Make in India, the level which Make in India has gone is that we are actually become an arms exporter. We are actually making arms and ammunitions, and we're not only using it for ourselves for filling up our arsenal, but we are also exporting that to the world. So in that sense, we're actually moving up really beautifully and very well. All right, so let's come back to the budget, okay? And let's focus on some of the very, very interesting things that have happened. Okay, so take us to the next slide, please. So, interestingly, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes on just this one little picture, right? So, I just thought, I wanted to show a relationship of the grand agenda that the government has and how various things that it has done and various announcements that they made this time around, how they are all sort of interlinked. And like the little tweet that I sent in the morning saying that we have to change our way in the way in which we think about investments. And that's exactly what we are going to do. And the second thing, after this discussion, you'll probably get a very good answer that why the Indian markets don't fall. So the general reason is that domestic participation is there, retail participation is there, SIPs at 37, I'm sorry, at 17, 18,000 number, ULIPs are coming in at about 10,000 crores per month. And that's the kind of investment which is happening. So the retail is supporting the market, and retail and domestic institution has become as large as foreign institution investors, and so on and so forth. All that is figure. So that is all happening on one side. But this is a very, very different perspective on why and how things are happening in our country. So I want to speak about the market for just 1 minute in terms of why the markets move up. So the markets move up on two things. One is that profit happens across the board for all companies. Basically, if one company prospers, makes higher profit than the last year, the share price is likely to go up. Right? If all the companies in a state do the same, then the state develops and the state revenue moves up. In the same way, if majority of companies in the whole country start doing well, and a representation of that is the stock market, then automatically the stock market moves up. So that's a very important way to understand how markets move. Now, the other thing is markets just don't move on their own. Businesses happen, standard businesses that we need every day, for example, toothpaste, toothbrush, a little bit of vehicle, mobility, transportation, etc. These things will anyways do. Electricity, we use it all the time. So these are utilities. These continue to do the way they are going to do, but you don't see a surge of growth in them. So while the markets continue to do what they do, what is it that gives it the major push or the major catalyst or the major fillip to the boost, to the growth? And that is government policy. or the grand agenda of the government. So when the government makes announcements that I want to do this, therefore this will happen, and as a result of which everybody gets all that business, all the companies participate, and things move on. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to move through this entire wheel one by one, and we will evaluate each one to figure out how we should think about our investments and what initiatives the government is announcing, what it means, and how it benefits us, right? So let's just straight away dive into this. And we're going to play a little bit of a game here also, okay? So I want most of you to unmute yourselves. All of you unmute your, mics. Of course, just make sure that there's no external noise or background noise coming in. We are going to talk about uh, things that constitute each of these ideas, okay? So for example, let's talk about programs, okay? Let's talk about housing. Let's pick up that. Now, the government has a major push on housing, correct? What we saw in terms of housing was that, and especially affordable housing. So what was announced earlier is that under the Awas program, they will make 2 crore houses. And now they're saying that the 2 crore target is more or less reached, and they're going to make 1 crore more houses. So when you make a house, what are the things that constitute the house? Okay, throw me answers as we sort of move along. So what are the things that go about into making a house? Of course, the basic is steel, cement. I mean, these are industries that benefit. So when the housing sort of industry is going to be getting a boost from the government saying we want to create 1 crore affordable housing or houses, which industries do you think will benefit? Come on, just think about it. Look around yourself in your houses and throw me some answers. So I gave you some examples: steel, cement. Go on. Zari, make a list. If you're on Excel, if you can.
Yeah, the woodworks.
Woodworks, yes. Ritesh is saying cables. Yeah, you guys, friends, you can chat also. You can
Electricity.
electricity.
uh,
Yes,
uh,
please. Power line, power and cables. Yeah, is some extension to electricity? Immediate extension. How does
Gas,
electricity?
Labor.
gas,
Gas to have, but how does electricity get transmitted?
copper, aluminum.
Copper, aluminum. I mean, electricity gets meters, transformers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Electricity moves through wires. Basically, we need wires to conduct the electricity.
That's what I meant by copper and aluminum wires.
Correct. Copper, aluminum. Vishal is saying ceramic tiles. Zari, if you can keep an eye on the chat also. So we'll make a little bit of a list, okay? And at the end of it, you will see what a huge investment universe you are. You've handed yourselves. Okay. You're watching the chat, right? Please confirm. Okay, very good. All right. So yeah, I mean, paint industry, plywood industry. I mean, the list goes on and on. How many ancillary industries get affected? Ceramics. I don't think anybody said ceramics. Sanitary ware, ceramics, etc. That's a massive industry. People spend. There's sometimes no limit. I mean, you might do interiors of 100 rupees, and you might spend 25 rupees out of that just doing bathrooms because you want them to be like, real luxuriously pleasure rooms, that kind of a thing. So people spend a lot of money, and the equipment, I'm told, to create a bathroom is really, really expensive, right? And we have multiple of those. Air conditioners these days are nicely sitting in kitchens as well. It's not just the living room, but they're in all the bedrooms. Televisions are sitting in every room. All right, okay. So that was housing as an example. Okay. Let's talk about another program of the government, Har Ghar Jal. See, it sounds so mundane, right? I mean, a socialist kind of an agenda that everybody should have water in their houses. So what's the big deal about it? The same thing for electricity, the same thing for gas, that everywhere, every household should have electricity, gas pipelines should basically reach everywhere. But a very simple thing like Har Ghar Jal, I mean, water is the basic element which helps in the survival of life, isn't it? So, but think a little deeper, and that's where I want to actually. Voice is not clear, Devang, but is anybody else having trouble with the voice?
no.
Okay, good. So Devang bhai, maybe your Wi-Fi, maybe if you move closer to the Wi-Fi or something like that. Okay, so I was talking about Har Ghar Jal, right? So if you think a little bit deeper, if you sort of just remove the first layer of the onion skin and think about how will actually Har Ghar Jal program become successful? So, from the lakes to the homes, what will conduct the water? Pipelines, for example. So, think about the thousands and thousands of kilometers of pipelines that is required, right from metal pipes to plastic pipes. So metal pipes which bring the water from the lake to a close reservoir point in your district or in your city. And then from there, you have a whole network, another maze of pipelines that take it to your buildings. And from your buildings through those PVC pipelines, this water gets into your house. So whether it is in an urban city where we anyways have this infrastructure, we are seeing that more and more buildings are happening. Real estate is having a fantastic time. I mean, we saw in the last month's presentation, we saw that real estate actually moved up 81% last year, which means a lot of people are buying houses, right? I mean, the demand for housing is very, very high, even in the luxury and the urban segments, correct? But think about this, to the lowest and the tiniest and the farthest village, the government wants to send water. And for water, the companies that make pipelines is like a huge, huge profit area. I mean, it's a huge business opportunity for them. So that's one way to look at it, right? Thinking about electricity. Now, a very simple thing like electricity. Uh, we spoke about electricity in terms of a basic necessity. We've always seen it that way, but we know remote parts of the country don't have electricity. But now, for example, see, electricity, I'm going to connect it with this blue economy program, I mean, economy 2.0. They gave incentives of free units of electricity to everybody. Now, think about the far reaching implications of that. Okay. Electricity, basic need of life. Why not have it renewable? Now, the government cannot really come and tell you in direct words that, look, there's too much of carbon in the atmosphere. It's making the air bad. You guys are going to have lung trouble. You're going to have all these kind of, respiratory diseases if we don't improve the air quality. And therefore, we need to, reduce the carbon emission. Now, that's too much of jargon for common people to understand. A nice and simple way to make you understand is, hey, install solar, 300 units free. Now, for a lot of households, 300, 500 units is pretty much free electricity. I mean, when you start looking at the whole country in the hinterland, okay, even in places which are generally cold, not so much Mumbai, not so much Chennai, but the geographies that are reasonably cold, they don't consume thousands of units of electricity. 300, 400, 600 units are what they consume. So imagine 300 free. That's a very nice way of government telling you that, look, free electricity chahiye, go and install a solar. Now, solar installation, I mean, you guys could help me with that, but somewhere I think it will be in the range of 3 to 4 lakhs, for about 4 or 5 kilowatts. I think it's a 1 lakh per kilowatt. That's the last I heard. I'm not sure of the estimate, but thereabouts, that's the cost. So if you want to install a 5 kilowatt solar plant in your house, that's what it's going to cost you. If somebody else has a better number, please let me know. Please share it. But that way, what a beautiful way of saying that I mean, the government is very serious, right? That we want to become net zero carbon free by 2070. It's so many years ahead. But if you don't make the initial effort now, it's not going to happen in many, many years to come. So a beautiful way to suddenly make this thing happen. Now, we start the game again. How many companies benefit out of electricity? Of course, wires is once again, copper wire, aluminum wire, that is going to conduct electricity. So electricity and power, let's merge it with gas. Friends, let's talk about which industries will benefit. Jhaveri, ready with I mean, you're ready to note the list? Friends, again, come on, throw me some names and numbers.
Kartik, all the power generation companies will definitely benefit.
Yes, power generation, power transmission, distribution companies. Yes.
Companies which manufacture meters to measure the consumptions.
Okay. Yeah, transmission. Yes, Prasad. Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Transmission, generation, distribution. Yes, wires and pipelines again. Wires, plastic industry, because plastic sort of covers the wire for insulation. Okay, There is another.
Meters.
Yes. Uh, okay. There's something very interesting that happens with electricity. Uh, See, electricity also needs finance. So there are certain financial services companies which fund electrical programs and which fund solar installations. So I don't know if many of you are aware of it. For example, a solar company would come to you with two types of options, saying that one, you can do a capex model and opex model. Capex model basically means that you pay for the infrastructure. So let's say there's a commercial building like our office building, and a company would come to us and say that we will install a solar plant on your terrace, and the cost is going to be say 1 crore. Of course, these are very high capital intensive projects because it's like a huge tower that requires that kind of capacity. So the company would say that, you know what, you only pay for the electrical unit generation from here, and in about few years time you will break even, and then the equipment is yours and all of that, and you don't need to worry about anything else, and then you could keep using electricity free or at whatever minimal cost, but the initial cost somebody else will bear. So the way this model works is that you or me as an investor, we can invest into a project which a solar project which sits on somebody's building, and that building will start paying us a return on investment. Okay, so that's the known as the capex model, and the opex model is obviously the model where you don't have to incur this whole capital expenditure yourself. So somebody else does it, and you do the power purchase agreement for them. So that's the difference, which means funding and financial services companies. In fact, for housing also, one very interesting area of housing is housing finance companies. So for people to buy a house, everybody takes a loan to buy a house. Majority people like to take a house, and someone like us, actually, we also encourage taking housing loans because, from a leverage point of view. But having said that, housing actually has real estate, financing companies also, NBFCs, Zarid, that finance housing finance companies that finance purchase of homes. Electricity also has companies that finance these electrical projects. Okay, so moving on from programs to progressive activities, we spoke about Abbas 1 Pro, we spoke about Blue Economy. Now let's talk about infrastructure. Okay, the list is endless here. Let's throw some names, but before those names, names of industries, of course. I mean, what is happening in this infrastructure area? Some very very interesting things. I couldn't resist sharing it with you. They said airports have doubled to 149, 500 new routes, 1,000 new aircrafts, in case if somebody has missed all these numbers. 1.3 crore passengers last year, third largest air traffic in the world, that is India. Okay, and it's not only just the larger cities, but this entire infrastructure of airports, roads, ports, the Sagarmala project, all of that is encompassing the whole country. The whole country is moving forward. I mean, infrastructure in terms of rail infrastructure, so many thousands of kilometers of railway tracks laid out, and the targets are only going higher and higher. So much so, if you remember in the last month's MMF, we said why the order book was so much larger than the market cap of these companies, and which is why these companies are continuously getting orders. So when there is so much of orders in the pipeline, how can that company stock fall? See, I'm not saying that the corrections will never happen. A lot of people have been expecting correction, hoga, or hoga bhi. I mean, from time, jab hoga, tab hoga. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in a week's time. It could happen in, a month's time, or maybe 3 months' time. We don't know that for sure. But we know for sure that it will happen. So that 10-15% will happen. That's a correction, in the stock prices. From an index point of view of 5 to 10%, 15%, we've always, been sharing this, that these kind of corrections happen. But if that company in that industry has an order book which is as large as its whole market capitalization, which is basically its net worth and more, if it's double of the net worth, just imagine you have capacity, and so many of you are into business and into manufacturing. You have capacity to manufacture 100 units of something, and you have a live order book of 250. So you can visibly see your sales for the next so many years. You can visibly see your profitability for so many years. Of course, as long as nothing adverse really comes into your way. So now, think about infrastructure and let's throw out some names. How many industries will infrastructure sort of make a difference in our lives? Of course, aviation is number one, shipping is number one, but friends, help me with some infrastructure industries. Come on, let's make, and we are making a list, and that list is going to be the list of universe of investments. So, infrastructure on the chat or unmute and please, let's share with the group. Infrastructure. There's more. There's power.
Ports,
There's
ports,
ports. Yes, there is
ports, ports, railways, of course.
Road
ports.
construction.
Now, each one of these is also lots of subsections, right? I mean, when you talk about railways, then there is somebody who provides catering in railways. There is somebody who provides internet services. There's somebody who makes
That's a big
wagons.
chunk.
There's somebody who makes wheels. There's somebody
Thousands of vendors, thousands of
thousands
vendors.
and thousands and thousands of vendors. On that budget day, I went to CNBC, and on CNBC, I said that India is now a small cap country. And what I meant was with that was that the big companies will anyways do very well. The big names and the big brands that we have, those will continue to do well. But there are so many smaller companies which are getting into the business of manufacturing. The ones who are already in the manufacturing are becoming larger than they were before. They are getting listed on the stock market, and we are getting the opportunity to invest in so many of these companies. So basically, India becoming a small cap country because we have so much of opportunity, which the government is initiating and saying, guys, go and do this, and let's develop this country together. So that's the reason small cap countries. Automobiles, yes, is also part of that's public auto infrastructure. So that's also going to give infrastructure a push. But so all metals, basically, when we sort of broadly categorize, all modes of transportation. So railway, seaports, road construction. So road construction companies, and then toll collection companies, electronic surveillance companies, drone companies, for example. I mean, drone, of course, would fall into defense. But having said that, we don't have defense really here. But there is one mention that about almost 6% of our GDP was spent on defense. It's the largest component. And worthwhile mentioning here, I think we spoke about this thing during war and markets in that session of MMF. But in that session, we said that, with the Russia-Ukraine war, India sort of figured that we're not going to get a lot of supplies of ammunition from Russia because they're already using up. We also explained in that session how each country has a limited amount of arms and ammunition. When really a war happens, how many days that arms and ammunition tends to last. And beyond that, they have to, then buy that equipment from other countries. They have to buy right from bullets to rifles to guns to tanks to everything. Right, everything has to be bought. So from that sense, India sort of realized that we anyways have threats from neighbors all the time. I mean, it's a live threat going on, and which is why we must become Atmanirbhar in the true sense of the word. That we should have our own development programs for defense and equipment for that, and so much so that in the last so many years that now we are even exporting missiles. We are making missiles, we have it for ourselves, and we are exporting that as well. So worth a mention, even in part of infrastructure, so that we're also building up our defense infrastructure. So defense, and then there's so many companies in defense, right from drones to surveillance to electronic gadgetry and systems. The list is endless. Okay, let's move to another very interesting angle. Now, think about it. This is all the things that the finance minister touched upon, right? That ye karna hai, wo karna hai. Now, for example, tourism. Now, tourism, this Ayodhya in the temple inauguration was one of the biggest examples of spiritual tourism. So what has always been happening in India is that we have a beautiful country, but we always like to go to Switzerland more than we like to go to, let's say, explore the valleys of Satara, for example. Or for that matter, the valleys of Ladakh and things like that. I mean, but that's because the infrastructure, ease of travel, ease of facilities, good hotels, transportation, everything's moving up. So if the government is saying that this is what we want to do, we want to have a place called, Statue of Liberty. We want to create that as a monument, a historical monument. And then you can have a lot of corporate offsites happening right from corporate offsites to you and I visiting that place, and tourism automatically moves up. With Ayodhya's example, just imagine the amount of ancillary industries which will sort of benefit. So tourism and supporting industries, everybody will benefit. But let's have some names. With tourism, what happens? Of course, the standard is aviation and railways. But other than aviation and railways, with tourism, what happens? Which other industries get benefited? Jhaveri, you have your list ready? Okay. Friends, tourism,
Food.
hotel, yeah,
Hotels, restaurants, travel, taxis for that matter.
taxis, right? Absolutely. I mean, so taxi is actually entrepreneurship also. And I'm going to come to this whole section on earnings and entrepreneurship. But yes, I mean, basically on the face of it, hotels. So hotels at every budget level. So you will even have a five-star hotel where you will spend
Three-star.
25,000 a night in Ayodhya, as well as 5,000 rupees a night. Handicrafts. Thanks, Anand. That was a nice one. Handicrafts. I mean, local people get the opportunity to show their wares, and basically see the whole ecosystem actually moves up. The whole ecosystem starts having more money in their pocket. And that's
As
exactly,
as small as flowers, temple may
yes,
give flowers like as small as
uh,
that thing.
plus, I mean,
Prasad for that matter.
prasad, mithai. So,
Yeah,
so
that's
this
right.
is all about spiritual tourism. And even on the other hand, if we have other areas like Lakshadweep, now suddenly the focus on Lakshadweep. So imagine, everybody will definitely have Lakshadweep on their to-do agenda in the next 1 or 2 years. And then Lakshadweep will have more hotels and more construction and everything else that's going to happen. So that brings me to another very interesting area, which is basically earnings. Okay, now think about earnings for startups. Again, there was so much focus on startups, right? Saying that so many in the Skill India program, so many 1.4 crore people were trained. Of course, I'm connecting with empowerment also, where it talks about Skill India. Now, this same Skill India is saying, okay, guys, do startups, do a lot of startups. Not only that, in the startups, we are also saying that we will give you loans, 50-year loans. And very, very quietly and in three words, the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned that for deep research in defense technology also. Few words, which means become more Atmanirbhar, do more research in defense. So set up your startups in defense. If you have a drone, make the drone 10 times more intelligent, for example. Indirect words, unsaid words, but look at the amount of focus that's coming here. So look at the employment opportunities it's creating. Now, why is employment opportunities interesting? Because you can't just keep taxing the rich, right? There is a limit to how much you can tax. And if you start crossing that limit, what's going to happen? The rich will leave the country and start moving to other countries. These days, I don't think any one of us has been spared with at least one information blast or one physical blast or some other blasting through Instagram or through an email or through a friend and family saying that come to Spain, come to Portugal, come to this country, come to that country. Our children are get bombarded all the time. Study for free, and it seems like everybody wants to invite Indians to come because A, we are a huge population, B, we are a talented population, and C, they are a withering population. Their population is aging and they don't have so many skills to take care of their own citizens in their own country, which is why suddenly we say red carpets anywhere in the world. Take the world map in front of you, put a finger, and probably there's a program by which you and I or your children can just go and become a part of that country. So that is already happening now, which is why it's important to create opportunities here itself, so that you sort of, in some sense, at least retain a large quantity of that talent pool, right? So startup. That's why these 50-year loans. That's why more development do all of that. Just think the amount of multiplicity of benefits. Now, this thing, MSP farmers, that is the minimum, selling price for farmers. Now, government keeps revising them from time to time. See, all these are, we may think socialist agenda. I mean, it would have been socialist agenda if it was not implemented, but here it's actually getting implemented. So, which means if there's more money in the farmer's pocket, come on, let's continue the game. How many ancillary industries get benefited because of farming? Zari, even if you think of some names, please feel free to write from. So fertilizers, uh,
Tractors.
tractors, yes, fertilizers, tractors, credit finance, insurance. By the way, did you see they announced that there is where's this insurance? There's 4 crores of crop insurance was actually uh, provided to farmers in the last year. So insurance companies, I mean, crop insurance is a very big business. So you don't worry about what's going to happen. You're insured. Uh, yes, last year almost 12 lakh crores farmers got direct financial assistance through direct benefit transfer. So see, huge things happening. Irrigation, I just saw irrigation somewhere. So irrigation facilities. Then pesticide companies. I mean, there are pesticide companies. I think most of you know the names also. So just think about fertilizer, pesticide, irrigation, water, tractors, financial services, pumps. Okay. So of course we are an agricultural country, right? So from that point of view, there are so many supporting industries that get benefit out of this. Let's move on to this next one. Okay, EV franchise. Now, very nice, very interesting announcement. I thought I loved that announcement. So they said a lot of people are encouraged to set up an electric vehicle charging station, straight and direct opportunity to get into a new business, to whether you want to have a chain of it, you want to set up a franchise network, or even just a person has a little bit of space, on the road. And that day is not far where I think that you'll be riding, let's say, suppose you're on a two-wheeler, you're driving on some road, and you just stop to maybe get a pan or something, or you get to buy a biscuit or a bottle of water, and you'll be surprised that that little vendor, that little tiny water stall or some vendor like that, or a sandwich wala on the road will have an EV charging point that, while you're having your sandwich, just plug it in and, charge your bike for a little while. I don't think that day is far away. We'll see that. Even for cars, you'll see, moving around everywhere on streets, you'll find, because that infrastructure has to be really good. Otherwise, how will electric vehicles move? But huge. Not only that, manufacturing, installation, distribution, and maintenance. So if you want to set up a larger business, be our guest, do that as well. So again, that's another earning opportunity. See, this is important, because if the middle class Indian population gets more money in their pocket, what's the obvious thing that's going to happen? That money is going to get spent, is going to be spent on consumption. Now, I want to sort of connect this idea of money with this women's empowerment program, this Lakpati Didi that you spoke of. So there are a lot of self-help groups, SHGs for short, across the country, which help women with microfinance, give them opportunities to get employed gainfully and make themselves financially empowered and independent at some point of time. And as a result of which, their self-respect goes up, their self-motivation goes up, and they can take care of not only themselves, but also support the household from a financial point of view. And now they're calling it Lakhpati, because obviously those women have prospered, and maybe a few lakhs may not make a large difference from a urban standpoint. From a rural standpoint, makes a huge difference. These women have cash flow, and this cash flow is going to find its way in the circulation of the economy, money circulation of the economy. They are going to spend, everybody is going to spend money. Of course, we will save also, but we also spend money for consumption activities. So this also brings money into the system. Of course, earnings for everybody. Now look at this big one. Okay, this was a big surprise. Very, very technical point. Fiscal deficit at 5.1%. Very technical, but basically, what that means is, I'll just give some numbers to you. Just put some numbers on your screen so that you get a better understanding. Okay, this is so India's GDP, approximately, we are more or less at $4 trillion. That translates into Indian rupees of, say, approximately it's just very rough estimate, 300 lakh crores. Okay, this is 300 lakh crores. This is our GDP. Okay, so now what happens is 5.1% is fiscal deficit. GDP is nothing but what? The income, the eye of the country. Just the way we have our own income and expenditure. No, most of us, and being associated with us, I would like to, emphasize the point that we've always made budgets to make investments. We've never been in a situation where our earnings are more than the income that we earn. So one way or the other, we were certain of that. So in that sense, here what happens is the expenditure of the country is, when they say 5% fiscal deficit, means 5% of this figure is basically 15. So which means the expenditure of the government has been 315, okay, lakh crores, of course, LC, and which means the deficit has been minus 50. So if you do income minus expenditure, so the income being plus 300, expenditure being 315 rupees, we are left with a negative of 15 rupees. Okay, with this is known as the fiscal deficit, very simply put. So that's 5%, and that's what the government is saying. So it used to be 6% earlier, which was more. Now it's gone to 5.1%. So from an economic standpoint and from a country point of view, it's a huge, huge plus. Now what happens automatically is when the deficit is lesser, so the government is borrowing lesser, interest payment is lesser. It's the same thing. What applies to us applies. This is just very, very large in terms of magnitude. If we save money, what's going to happen is we'll invest or we'll spend, one of the two things. So the government is going to pay lesser interest cost because this money is what the government is going to borrow, right, through the RBI bonds and various state bonds that we invest in. So if they are going to borrow lesser, then that means they'll have to pay interest lesser. I mean, obviously, and anywhere in the world, if you spend less in terms of interest, automatically your profitability goes up. So this is the same logic really playing out. A huge, huge benefit. And as a result of this, what happened is on the day of the budget, and when this announcement came, I don't know how many of you noticed, but the public sector banks in the morning were more or less trading flat. And as soon as these announcements came, and sometime by the end of the session, all the public sector just really shot off and they had a fabulous day. So they had a great market day, and that happened because of this announcement. And then I heard a lot of economists and everybody saying that this is a real, real positive surprise. And not only this, the idea is that by next year, we want to, by FY25, they want to, go below 5, and the target is to reach somewhere at about 4.5%, if I'm right. And then not only that, we are actually progressing our way to being a developed country by 2047. Now, at the speed at which things are happening, I won't be surprised if that actually really happens. And in our lifetimes, we see India as a developed country, and I mean, every few months we are seeing, our lives changing with the way India is progressing. Look at this very interesting thing: empowering different sections of society. Northeast is a big focus. Sports is a big focus. To provide opportunities again for everybody. It's just not fun, but sports as an industry. Come on, think about it now. Sports. How many supporting industries get benefited? Especially all the people from North. I mean, there's a lot of sports manufacturing companies in Punjab and Ludhiana. The right, very tiny ones to the big ones. Come on, throw some names.
Rubber, leather.
Rubber, leather. I mean, there was during World Cup, there was this one video which was going viral about how a season ball is made. I mean, how a cricket ball is created, and how many thousands of balls are produced by those industries. I mean, sports, for example, just think about something like a huge event, like a huge sporting event, like we saw, this thing happening in the UAE. I mean, 2020 was one thing, G20 that happened last year in India, or for that matter, Olympics that happened in a particular country. That sport is an event, promotes tourism, brings so many millions of people to the country. And with G20, by the way, a lot of people actually saw that India is much different than what they had imagined and how it has progressed and things like that. So that's actually given India a lot of mileage. Now, when sports are focused and there are sport tournaments and things like that that happen in India, again, think about the multiplicity of industries that get benefited. So there are so many things. There's so many things, and they all can be summarized in one little tiny sentence. Go to the next slide, please. Very simple. I just said this on TV also, so I thought I'd just repeat it here. And with that, you can close the presentation.